Okay, looking through the papers once again for you this morning with charity director Ceri Dingle and economist and academic Ashok Kumar. Good morning. I mean, to be fair, he's got a cheek as Ashok because he wants me to say academic, which he is. He's also then just saying, can you make sure you do these stories and don't change the order?
Look, I've been here enough times. I could make some demands.
2 minutes.
And
2
we
minutes.
mustn't.
2 minutes after we're all talking about how old we are, and he said, "It's not your fault. White people don't age well." You see? And now you're making demands.
What we discuss in the break stays in the break. You know the rule.
Las Vegas.
I'm feeling very, very,
It's all very shocking.
wrinkled. It's disgraceful, isn't it?
Shocking.
Anyway, look.
Get on with the papers, shall we?
Let's.
Ceri, you take us into this story. The Russians now wanting to interview Yulia Skripal. They're saying that it's their right to be able to speak to her.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the one hand, you almost want to say, well, fair enough. I mean, not for Yulia. It's great that she's in recovery and is able to talk, and she probably certainly doesn't want to talk to anybody in particular and be questioned. And I know that her relatives back in Russia have said, please don't use her as a political pawn. But that's already happening. And on the other hand, I think the level of Russia bashing and Theresa May and the government's grandstanding over this, which has thrown all, I would say, good, sensible diplomacy out of the window, means that, Russia is going to come back with these sort of things.
Well, hold on. What do you do under the circumstances where, everyone who's in the know with this sort of thing is saying, yeah, it looks like it was Russia.
But
everyone who was in the know 15 years ago
about
also
Iraq.
said about Iraq. So I question everyone who's in the know.
But surely there is a sensible matter if you're, in government, if you're serious about your nation, if you want to protect sovereignty, you would say seriously to Russia, okay, help us with this criminal investigation. And they didn't. They did. You've got 10 hours or you're out.
So you're saying that Theresa May was wrong to expel the Russian
Theresa May was wrong.
You can't ask Russia to investigate something they're accused of doing.
Well, you don't accuse until you find out. And that would be a more sensible
you send investigators
But you have a serious investigation and you do serious diplomacy. I mean, all we seem to be doing is ratcheting up, a new Cold War. So
it's not a new Cold War.
But we are getting that, aren't we?
Information just comes from this government. How is there any accountability? How do we know what the truth is? There has to be some.
Well, no, but the word
running
behind
around the world,
closed
getting
doors.
other countries to chuck out their diplomats.
Well, they've all agreed with her, haven't they? When they've heard what's been said behind closed doors, they've agreed with her.
Great distraction from the EU debate and their own domestic problems, and it is moral grandstanding. It's got very little to do with really what Russia's up to, and everything to do with you're standing at home.
But deploying a
we're
nerve
big.
agent
We're against the bad, evil empire. That's how it comes across to me, and I think a lot of other wise people too.
But you're not suggesting that.
I don't think Russia's innocent.
European countries are expelling diplomats to distract from their internal problems.
I think they're playing the anti-Russian card too, absolutely. Are they threatened by Russia? No. Is Russia about... Oh, Stephen, come on. What's Russia going to do to you or anyone else?
Well, they're talking about all the cyber issues and everything else, aren't they?
Oh, yes. Well, everybody voted for Trump or Brexit because they're stupid.
No, it's not. But it's about it's like shutting down NHS systems and all that, and energy systems, which is
I think there are bad news people in Russia and all over the world, as it happens. But you don't run foreign policy on the back of panics, smears, and rerunning the Cold War.
Well, who would have thought that you two were going to agree on anything this morning?
That's true.
Shocked us. Ashok, to the Times, looking at what we're seeing, these Palestinians who've been killed in these clashes.
Look, the recent case, you have 30,000 protesters marching to the border in Gaza. These are people who were dispossessed in 1948 in the creation of Israel, who are peacefully marching to the border between Gaza and Israel, also occupied since 1968, but now an open-air prison. 16 have been killed. I mean, the Israeli state hasn't even denied that they were killed because they'd done anything violent, but some sort of oblique reference to it being possibly a riot. The right of return, and so that's what they're claiming, the Palestinians, the right of return is defended by over 60 resolutions in the UN of refugees to return to the land that they were dispossessed. And, you know, we see people often bloviating about why don't they use Gandhian methods, etc., etc. This is a Gandhian method, and they're still being killed. And I think that, you know, what's really...
Of course, Israel is saying that, you know, they were provoked into taking... They're saying it wasn't a peaceful protest.
Well, there's no evidence that it wasn't. I mean, all the reporters on the ground are saying that they were just a peaceful... There were people playing soccer, walking near the border. There are no violent clashes, and yet
this report does say some Gazans threw stones and firebombs at the soldiers and rolled burning tyres in their direction.
Regardless, 16 people being killed when they pose no threat to anybody, including the security forces, which there's a massive line of fire between. They were killed by snipers, right? So, and the fact is that our government continues to support the Israeli government despite all kinds of human rights violations. And I mean, that's part of the tragedy of the story.